My voice cracks like broken glass. Maybe it's the rot in my lungs, or maybe it's the gods finally telling me to shut the hell up. Can't blame them. The wasteland's full of ghosts with stories, and none of them ever know when to shut it. But mine's different. Mine's got teeth. You want to know who I am? You don't. But you'll listen anyway. Not because I deserve it, but because you're just like me. Curious. Stupid. Looking for some piece of truth to stitch together the bleeding parts inside you. Fine. Sit your ass down. Turn that recorder on. Just don't ask me my name. Names are for the living. I wake up with dirt in my teeth most mornings. That's how I know I'm still here. The wind howls through the broken ribcage of this old Nuka World outpost. Used to be raider territory once. Now it's just rust and bones. Fitting. The walls are tagged in faded red. You can barely read them anymore. Blood rules. No kings. Die free. I wrote one of those. Maybe all of them. Back then, I had hands steady as rifle barrels and a heart full of fire. Now, my fingers twitch like they forgot how to hold anything but memory. My skin's peeled back so many times, it's more parchment than flesh. I piss dust. I bleed black. I cough and it smells like old copper and ozone. I ain't dead, not yet. But I'm close enough to shake its damn hand. Used to be. I was someone. Not someone good. Not someone kind. But someone who made other men flinch when they heard my boots crunch gravel outside their gate. They called me Ash. I earned that name. Not because of how I looked. Back then, I still had a jawline and hair that wasn't falling out in clumps. Nah, it was because when I left a place, all that was left behind was ash and echoes. Screams, if you listened hard enough. But before I was Ash, I was nothing. I came from a place where names didn't matter, where the only thing that got you food was how hard you could bite the bastard sitting next to you. The only lullaby I knew was the rattle of chains and the crack of a slaver's whip. Paradise Falls, they called it. Funny name for a cage. I didn't tell you all this so you'd feel sorry for me. Don't. I don't want it. I don't need it. Pity is for folk who still believe there's something left to save. I'm telling you this because if I don't, it dies with me. And there are things in this world that need remembering, not because they're sacred, but because they're dangerous. And if you forget dangerous things, they have a habit of coming back. Like me. I don't sleep much anymore. Ghouls don't really need it. But every now and then, I drift. And when I do, I dream of her. Della. She was just a spark in a world full of wildfire. Didn't ask to be born. Didn't ask to be left behind. But I did both to her. Brought her into this mess and then walked away with blood on my boots and silence in my throat. I don't even remember the last words I said to her. That's the part that stings. You'd think a monster like me would remember the screams, the kills, the battles. I do. Every one of them. Every bullet I fired. Every man I gutted. But her? The one thing that should have mattered? It's a blur. Just the shape of her face. The way she looked at me like she wanted to kill me and hug me all at once. That's how you know someone matters. When you can't tell if they saved you or damned you. You ever seen a man rot from the inside out? Not just his skin, though that's bad enough. No, I mean his soul, his sense of self. What little thread was keeping him stitched together just unravels. That's what ghoulification does. Burns away everything you were until you're just a walking question mark. I didn't scream when it happened to me. I laughed. Of course, the laugh sounded more like a dying animal, but it was real, because I knew the fire hadn't killed me, just changed me. and that meant I still had time to finish what I started. So here I am, in the dark, talking into a tape recorder older than most vault kids, letting my voice scratch its way into the world one last time. Not because I want to be remembered, but because she deserves the truth. If you're hearing this, and you know a woman named Della, maybe she goes by something else now. Maybe she's leading a gang, or guarding a wall somewhere, or burying bodies out in the flats. Tell her Ash is still alive. For now. And tell her I'm sorry. But don't expect her to forgive me. She was never the forgiving kind. She got that from her mother. They call it the wasteland like it's a place. It ain't. It's a hunger, a thing that eats everything. Men, women, towns, even names. It leaves bones in the dirt and calls it mercy. I was born in that hunger, not out of love, out of chance. My mother said once I was conceived behind a slaver's cage in a place they called Paradise Falls. Don't let the name fool you. There weren't no waterfalls, just fences, collars, and the kind of men who learned early that empathy don't feed you. When you're born in a pen, the world's already decided what you're worth. Back then, I wasn't worth much. The first sound I remember wasn't a lullaby. It was the sound of boots, the kind that stomp, not walk. Chains rattling. The crack of a whip that made grown men fold like paper. I saw a man beaten to death with a rifle stock when I was 5. Didn't cry. Didn't even flinch. I remember thinking, at least it ain't me. That's how the wasteland trains you. Not with lessons, but with relief. Relief that the screams ain't yours. When my mother was sold, I didn't even get to say goodbye. They dragged her out in the morning, and by sundown she was gone. I found her bracelet in the dirt later, a bent loop of copper wire she used to keep her hair tied back. I wrapped it around my wrist, and I've never taken it off. The only thing I ever inherited. They called me Ash Rat back then. Scrawny kid, filthy, fast, mean when cornered. When the raiders came through, burning camps and slaver dens, I thought it was the end. But the leader looked at me, this mountain of a man with a skull painted over his face, and said, "Got bite, this one. Keep him." That's how I joined the Burned Hounds. The Hounds didn't just raid, they preached, had their own kind of religion. Their god wasn't Adam or some old-world spook in the clouds. It was fire. They said the world ended in flames, and only through flame could it be reborn. We burned everything we took. Houses, caravans, sometimes whole families. The fire wasn't just destruction, it was proof. Proof we were still alive when everything else was ash. And when you're a kid surrounded by monsters, you learn to howl too. By 13, I was carrying a rifle taller than me. Didn't know how to read, but I could strip, clean, and rebuild a pipe gun blindfolded. Could gut a man faster than I could tie a knot. They made me earn my place with blood. Not mine, somebody else's. That's how you join a raider clan. Not with oaths, but with a kill. The first one was a traitor, just some tired man in a duster. Didn't fight, didn't beg. Just looked at me like he'd already died before I even raised the gun. I pulled the trigger anyway. The recoil damn near snapped my arm, but the cheer that came after, that's what stuck. That sound. Approval. Like applause after a show. That's how they hook you. Not with violence, with belonging. The Hounds roamed the borderlands between the capital wasteland and the old Pittsburgh routes. The air always smelled of iron and smoke, like the earth itself was scorched. Sometimes we'd run into slaver caravans, trade captives, ammo, drugs. The pit steelmen didn't like us much, but they knew better than to start a fight they couldn't finish. There was no law, no mercy, no reason. Just survival and the stories we told ourselves to make it sound noble. We had rules, though. Yeah. Raiders with rules. Rule 1, never waste food. Rule 2, never kill a hound unless you want to be eaten by one. Rule 3, the fire always comes first. If a town resisted, we burned it. If they surrendered, we burned it slower. The fire decided who was strong enough to live through the pain. You probably think I'm proud of it. I'm not. But I'm not ashamed either. Shame's for people who still got something left to lose. See, the hounds didn't make me a monster. They just told me it was okay to stop pretending I wasn't one. There's a kind of peace in that. When you've seen enough death, enough filth, enough betrayal, you stop fighting what you are. You stop asking why. You just do. You become. That's what the Red Years were. Years where the only calendar was the number of towns we razed. The dirt got soaked so deep with blood the rain came down pink. The sky never cleared. I don't think it was supposed to. We had songs too. Twisted campfire hymns about who burned the hottest, who screamed the loudest. Laughter and pain sound the same after a while. That's something no one tells you. When I turned 20, they branded me. Burned the hound's mark into my back with a hot piece of steel. A skull with a tongue of flame curling out its jaw. Said it meant I was family. That brand still itches when I smell smoke. Even now. Even after the rot took most of the nerves out of my skin. That's the kind of family we were. Bound not by love, but by scars. You ever see what fire does to a man when it takes its time? It doesn't just melt skin. It sings, crackles like laughter. That's how I remember my mentor, the skull-faced man. We called him Preacher, 'cause every raid he'd make us kneel before the flames and pray to the ashes. He'd say, "The world died once. We're just keeping it honest." When he burned, I didn't look away. That's how I learned what comes after worship. You burn your gods, just like you burn everything else. After Preacher's death, the hounds broke into packs. I led one of them. Young, reckless, drunk on blood and stories. Thought I'd carve my name into the wastes and make the world remember me. And for a while, I did. People whispered about me like I was a curse. Said the burned hounds had a new leader. One who didn't just light the fires, but watched until they burned out. Said I had no eyes, just coals. Said my veins ran red with fuel, and I let them say it. Because in the wastes, fear is worth more than caps. It keeps you alive. Those were the Red Years. Years when I believed in the only God that ever answered prayers. Fire. If I close my eyes, I can still smell the smoke, still feel the heat biting through my boots, still hear the wind carrying screams across the horizon. Back then, I thought that was power. Now I know better. Power fades, fire dies, and all you're left with is the smoke that follows you wherever you go. Power doesn't arrive with fanfare. It creeps in, like rust on steel, like rot in the bone. You don't notice you're the one in charge, until no one dares to look you in the eye anymore. Until men lower their weapons when you speak, not because they respect you, but because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. That's how I rose. One raid at a time. One betrayal at a time. One corpse at a time. The hounds had splintered after Preacher burned. The packs turned on each other like starved dogs. And I led the hungriest. We took the old truck depot off I-99, stripped the rigs for parts, turned the chassis into cages, built walls out of twisted rebar and car hoods. It wasn't a fortress. Not yet. But it was ours. They started calling it the Maw. Said it was where things went to vanish. Said it had a hunger of its own. Maybe they were right. Places like that learn from the people who bleed into them. I made it law. Not justice, not order, just law. My law. I wasn't the kind of warlord that made speeches, didn't wave flags or talk about legacy. I just made sure everyone knew the rules. Don't steal from the tribe. Don't run from a fight. Don't lie to me. You break one, you leave with fewer limbs than you came in with. You break two, you don't leave at all. Nobody ever broke three. Not twice anyway. We ran caravans thin. Took what we needed, took what we didn't. Some we let live, some we didn't. Depends on what mood the fire was in. I started making deals, slaver rings, chem runners, even a few Talon Company mercs who decided money was cleaner than loyalty. The maw grew fat, greedy, and so did I. Then came Chancer's Hollow. Just another pissant settlement with scrap walls and too much pride. We sent scouts ahead, figured they'd roll over. They didn't. That place fought like hell. Farmers with broken rifles, kids throwing rocks. A Brahmin tried to gore one of my lieutenants. The defenders lost, of course, but they made it hurt. I respected that. Briefly. We dragged the survivors to the maw. That's where I met her. She didn't look scared, didn't beg, didn't break, not even when they dragged her through the dust. Her face was scraped raw, blood in her teeth. But her eyes, they burned. She said her name was Mara, just a name, one of 1,000. But I remembered it, and that's the part I still can't explain. I'd thrown dozens into the pens and forgot their names before the cages locked shut. But her? She stayed in my mind. Maybe it was pride. Maybe defiance. Maybe it was because in a world of wolves she refused to act like prey. She spit on my boots the first time I spoke to her. That was the closest thing to love I'd felt in years. No, don't twist it. I didn't save her. I wasn't her knight. I wasn't even her captor. She was just there. A wound that refused to close. She worked the scav teams, hauled rusted junk back from the fields, somehow survived, day after day. Refused food some nights, gave hers to the older ones, protected the younger ones with a sharp tongue and a broken wrench. She never asked for favors, and so I gave her one. I told the others, she's off limits. Didn't explain, didn't argue. They knew better than to ask. Months passed. I don't remember how it happened. Maybe it was a few too many nights drinking alone. Maybe it was the silence after the battles, when the screams stopped and the maw felt too quiet. She didn't say much even then, but sometimes I'd find her standing near the fire, arms crossed, staring into the coals like they owed her something. I knew that look. It was the same one I saw in the mirror. Anger without a place to go. The kid came months later, not planned, not discussed. Mara never said a word, just handed her off to one of the medics like it was any other wound that needed stitching. She named her Della, said it meant something soft in a world made of steel. I didn't argue, didn't dare. I didn't hold her much, didn't know how. I taught grown men how to break bones and build death machines. But the first time I saw that kid's eyes, something in me backed away. She didn't cry when I picked her up. She just stared. Same look as her mother, same fire. I never told the tribe she was mine, didn't have to, they knew, but they also knew better than to speak it out loud. Della grew up in the maw like a weed in concrete. Tough, quiet, smart, watched everything, learned fast, too fast. I started imagining something better. Not paradise, not peace, just different. A way out. A chance to build, instead of burn. Maybe I'd teach her how to fight, sure, but also how to lead. Not like me. Better. But the fire doesn't care about your dreams. Not in the maw. The walls started whispering. Raiders don't stay loyal forever. Especially when their king starts dreaming of gardens. Crow, my second, started stirring the pit. Tall bastard. Silver tongue. Said I was going soft. Said the maw needed a real warlord, not a father. Said I was letting blood turn to water. He was right. It started small, missing shipments, broken orders, fights between lieutenants. Then, one night, I came back from a supply run and found my throne room empty. No banners, no fire, just silence. The gates were open, the cages were full, and Mara was gone. So was Della. That was the last time I felt human. The moment I knew I'd failed, not as a warlord, but as a man. Crow didn't even have the guts to kill me outright. Left me with a bottle of whiskey and a bullet. Expected me to finish the job, but I didn't. Because Crow made one mistake. He took my child. And in doing so, he reminded me of the one rule he should have never broken. Don't lie to me. You think when the knife comes, you'll feel it. That the pain will be sharp, sudden, righteous, even. Like a story, finishing the only way it could. But that's not how betrayal works. It's slower, colder, like rust chewing through the barrel of a gun you thought would always fire true. The maw didn't fall in fire. It didn't fall in blood. It fell in silence. I remember the first sign. No guards on the tower. Torches unlit. The wind too quiet. I thought maybe it was a trick, some trap from a rival gang. But deep down, I knew. Crow had made his move. The bastards didn't even have the spine to face me head on. They waited until I was off site, meeting with a trader crew from the pit. When I rode back through the gate, everything felt wrong, like the whole place was holding its breath. I should have left then, but I didn't, because I was still foolish enough to think they wouldn't. Not to me, not with Della still inside. The ambush hit near the throne pit. 3 men from my own crew. I raised one, broke bread with the other. They didn't speak, didn't gloat, just swung their blades and hoped I'd fall fast. I didn't. Took 2 of them with me. The third got lucky. Crow's knife, I think. Curved like a grin. Poison at the edge. Slid under my ribs and whispered things into my blood I ain't stopped hearing since. I woke up in the bones. They left me at the old kill site, out near the craters, where the sky still burns red at dusk. No bullets, no fire, no grave. Just the dirt and the rot. And 1 bullet. My bullet. Like I was supposed to do them the favor. I didn't die. I wanted to. I begged to. But the thing crawling through my veins had other ideas. The fever came first, burning under the skin like embers trying to escape. My hands blistered, my teeth loosened, my hair fell out in black, oozing clumps. I thought it was infection. I thought it was death. But it wasn't. It was the change. Radiation don't kill everyone. Sometimes it decides to keep you, stretch you out, hollow you from the inside, turn you into something caught between breath and dust. A ghoul. The first time I looked in a puddle and saw what I'd become, I screamed. Not because I was afraid, but because I recognized the thing staring back. I'd always been this. The skin had just caught up. The days blurred. Time lost its teeth. I crawled, Dragged myself across the flats. Ate moss. Rats. My own vomit. Once. Every breath hurt. Every thought echoed like a gunshot in a locked room. I should have died a dozen times. But I didn't. Because something meaner than death lived inside me now. The first coherent memory I have after the sickness is a fire. Small one. Just coals, really. Some trader camp in the hills. I don't remember how I got there. Maybe they found me. Maybe I followed the smell of meat. But I remember the way they looked at me. Not with fear. With revulsion. Like I was some kind of walking grave. Like my breath stank of the world that died before theirs began. They threw rocks. Called me a crawler. A corpse. One kid, maybe 15, threw a Molotov and laughed. I burned. Again. But I didn't scream this time. I just stood there, watching the fire curl around my arms like old lovers. When it faded, they were gone. And I was still standing. That's when I understood. I was no longer Ash, warlord of the Maw. I was something else. Something worse. I wandered for months after that. No direction, no plan. Just the memory of Della. I asked around. Hit old contacts. Threatened people who barely remembered the Maw. Most had heard the same thing. A child. Taken. Sold. Rumors said she was bought by a slaver ring heading southeast. Maybe toward the capital wasteland. Maybe farther. Some said she escaped. Some said she died. Some just shook their heads and told me to forget her. But you don't forget your own blood. Not when that blood might still be bleeding. So I started hunting. Not with bullets. Those come later. First comes the look. The stink of guilt. The twitch when you ask the right name at the wrong time. Slavers. Raiders. Smugglers. Ex-Maw defectors. I carved a path through the East Coast with nothing but a knife and the kind of rage that doesn't age. Word started to spread. They called me the burning corpse, said I was cursed, said I couldn't be killed, said if you saw smoke on the horizon and the wind smelled like scorched leather, run, because Ash was still out there. But here's the part they never understood. I wasn't punishing the world. I was looking for her. Every camp I burned, every chain I broke, every body I left twitching in the dust. It was all just noise. All just desperate signal flares, hoping she'd see them, hoping she'd know I hadn't stopped. Sometimes I found signs, stories, carvings. A nickname, Red Eyes. They said she fought in the pits once, said she never lost. Said she slit her own handler's throat with a rusted spoon and walked out into the dark like a ghost. I started to believe that she was alive, that she'd learned, survived, thrived. That maybe the fire in her hadn't gone out. But belief is a dangerous thing in the wastes. It feeds you, keeps you warm, right until it burns you from the inside out. Now, when I wake up in some half-collapsed ruin or under a rusted overpass, body twitching from radiation sickness and rot, I still whisper her name, Della. It's the one word that still sounds human when it comes out of my throat. The one thing that reminds me what I used to be, and what I still am. I'm not looking for redemption, not looking for peace. I just want to see her face. One more time. Even if she spits in it, even if she puts a bullet in me, I'll take it, gladly. Because after all this, after fire and betrayal and the slow rot of time that would finally feel like truth. You ever look for someone in a world that's already dead? It's like shouting into a canyon that swallowed 1,000 voices before yours, and expecting an answer. But I kept shouting. And somewhere out there, I started to believe. She might be shouting back. I walked for years, not in a straight line, not with maps or markers, just memory and rage. Across the bones of old cities, through the glassed valleys near Vault 94, over the rust-choked rivers that used to feed DC. Sometimes I'd see the Brotherhood's flag, fluttering off in the distance, or the flash of laser fire cutting across the hills like lightning. I kept my distance. They don't like ghouls, especially ones that smell like burning slaver camps. Didn't matter. I wasn't there for them. I was there for her. Word travels different in the wasteland. It's not radios or holotapes. It's campfire whispers. Rumors scratched into metal signs. Bloody graffiti under collapsed highway bridges. It's in the stories that survivors tell to keep themselves sane or afraid. That's how I first heard of her. Red eyes. They said she walked barefoot through broken glass and didn't flinch. That she once bit off a man's ear in the pit at Pine Run and didn't spit it out. That her stare could make a full-grown raider drop his weapon and cry. Some said she was a ghost. Some said she was Adam's chosen. Some said she was my daughter. But none of them said where she went. So I hunted the stories instead. Every time I found a raider gang that claimed to know her name, I gave them a chance. Tell me where she is. Most lied. Some ran. All burned. There was one camp. Old pit dogs holed up in a scorched rail yard near Erie. Said they had a girl with red eyes once. Said she fought for them. In the pits. In the blood ring. Claimed she killed 17 men and walked away without a scratch. I asked what happened to her. They said she vanished. One night she just walked out, left the chains behind, walked through the main gate without a weapon, without a word. The guards didn't stop her. Said she stared at them like she'd already buried them in her head. That sounded like her. But it wasn't enough. I kept moving, left scorched camps behind me, each one screaming louder than the last. They started calling me the Burning Corpse. At first it was just a nickname. Then it became something else. A story. A warning. Some said I could smell slavers from a mile off. Said I was immune to fire. Said I fed on radiation like a plant fed on sunlight. They weren't far off. I let the stories grow. Fed them. Because fear makes men stupid. And I needed stupid men to talk. One night, out in the blasted ruins of an old red rocket station, I found a scav hiding under a rusted Nuka-Cola truck. He was shaking like a stim junkie on a dry day. Said he saw a woman near the Strip. Not Vegas, but the trade hub outside what used to be Trenton. Called her Vulture. Said she had red eyes. Said she never looked at people, just through them. Said she was building something. A camp, a gang, a wall. Something new. I should have gone right then, but I didn't. I was afraid. Not of dying, not of losing. Afraid of what I'd find. What if she was gone? What if she hated me? What if she'd become me? Still, the road wouldn't stop calling. So I followed it. One broken bootstep after another, through dust storms that stripped skin, through ruins echoing with feral screams, through a town called Little Bleak, where I found a mural carved into a church wall. It was her face. I knew it was. A woman drawn in charcoal, eyes like twin suns, mouth stitched shut. Underneath it, 3 words. Let her be. But I couldn't. I was too far gone. Too hollow to be filled by anything except her voice. Even if it came with a scream. The more I hunted, the more I started to see what I'd become. Not a man. Not anymore. A warning. Children whispered about me in hushed tones. Settlers locked their doors at night if they saw firelight on the ridges. Caravan guards flinched when the wind carried the smell of burned leather. I was a ghost, riding on fumes and memory. And wherever I went, I left ashes behind. I started writing her name on walls. Della, chalk, paint, blood when I had to. Left it in places she might see, if she still walked the same roads. Sometimes I'd find it crossed out, other times rewritten. Once, in a collapsed bunker near Rivet City, I found it carved into metal. Not by me, not by chance. Della was here, still watching, still breathing. That was when I knew she was alive. Somewhere out there, in the rot and ruin, she wasn't just surviving, she was becoming. And if I had to claw my way through every raider hovel and slaver den on the continent, I'd find her, even if she didn't want me to. You don't understand obsession until it starts to replace you, until it's the only thing in your head louder than the guilt. I wasn't hunting slavers for justice. I wasn't tearing down camps for redemption. I was doing it because every dead bastard might have been the one who touched her, sold her, broke her. And if I couldn't save her, then I'd end every man who tried to hurt her. They say the wasteland eats your soul. That's wrong. It doesn't eat it. It splits it in half. One part screams, the other keeps walking. I became the part that kept walking. And behind me, only fire. They called it Mercy's End. Town built like a fist. Walls made from snapped highway pylons and collapsed vertibird frames. Looked like something a Brotherhood scribe might sketch after drinking turpentine. Crude, ugly, effective. But it wasn't the walls that caught my eye. It was the people. Hard-eyed, scar-marked, quiet. Not settlers, not raiders either. Something in between. Like they'd crawled out of the same kind of hell I had and decided to build a fence around it. I'd tracked rumors here. Whispers carved into rusted signage. Names traded over cracked terminals and blood-streaked holotapes. Every path led to one word. Vulture. A woman who didn't blink, who didn't smile, who led not with fear, but silence. Said she built Mercy's End from the bones of the gangs that tried to burn it. Said she watched men die without twitching. Said her eyes were red. I waited 2 days outside the town, watched the patrols, the way they moved. Not sloppy like most wasteland guards. These ones had training. Not Brotherhood, not NCR, pit fighters. I recognized the stance, the way they stood like coiled springs, the way they scanned not just with rifles, but with memory. That look only people who've lived in cages long enough to know the weight of the chain carry. That's when I knew. She was inside. I didn't go in guns blazing, didn't light a fire or leave a warning like I used to. I walked up to the gate with my hands empty, my face uncovered, and my voice low. Said I wanted to speak to the one they call Vulture. They didn't answer, just stared at me. Then one nodded. The gate creaked open like the wasteland itself exhaling. They led me through alleys of scrap and silence. Mercy's End wasn't built for beauty. It was built to endure. No markets, no lanterns, no kids playing in the dirt, just work. Guards, watchers. People here weren't surviving, though. They were waiting. For another war, another storm, another reason to hold the line. And they looked at me like I was that storm. She waited in the tallest building, an old telecom relay with its top gutted and turned into a command post. Steel plates welded into floors. Rifle nests in every window. Walls lined with maps, ammo crates, and books too damaged to read, but too sacred to burn. And there she was, Vulture. She stood with her back to me, watching the horizon like it might sneak up on her. Hair tied back in braids, burn scars crawling up one arm like ivy. Wore a jacket made from stitched raider leathers, symbols crossed out with red paint. One of them was mine. Her voice when she spoke was low, controlled. "You're the corpse, the one who burns." I nodded. "You know why I'm here?" She turned, and my knees almost gave out. Same eyes, same jawline, but harder, like someone had ground the softness away and left only the steel. She didn't blink, didn't flinch, just stared at me like I was something she'd already buried. "I know what you're hoping. Don't." I wanted to speak, to say her name, but the words wouldn't come. They got tangled in guilt, in smoke. She stepped closer. "Della's dead." The way she said it, like a knife sliding into old scar tissue. She died the day a raider warlord left her in a cage and called it protection. I didn't argue, didn't plead, because I knew what she meant. Della, the girl, was gone. What stood before me now was Vulture, something reborn. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "To say sorry?" She laughed once, dry, cracked. "We don't do apologies out here. We bury them." I looked at her, at the scar above her right eye, one I remember from a fall in the Maw's old scrapyard. I'd patched her up, used a dirty rag and a bottle of rot gut. She hadn't cried then either, just like now. "I came to see if you were alive," I finally said. She tilted her head. "You came to see if I was like you." And there it was, the truth, naked and bitter. We talked for hours. Not about the past, not directly. No stories of the Maw. No talk of Mara. No begging for forgiveness. Just the wasteland. We spoke of raider movements out west, Brotherhood patrols near Adams Air Force Base, slaver resurgence in the ruins of Paradise Falls. She asked about the firestorms in New Pitt, about the red-eyed ghouls in the north, about Crow, and that name hit like a hammer. "He's still out there," I said. She nodded. "I know. He's coming." That was when I understood. Mercy's End wasn't just a camp. It was a last stand. And she wasn't running. She was waiting. Before I left, I asked one question. Just one. "Do you want me here?" She didn't answer right away. Just looked at me with that same unreadable stare. Then said, "If you're looking to make peace, help us keep what we've built." No tears, no reunion, no redemption, just terms. And I took them. Because after all the fire and blood, maybe the closest thing to forgiveness I'd ever get was the chance to stand beside her when the walls came down. The wasteland doesn't care who you are, only what you've done. It doesn't ask where you came from, doesn't care about your name. It remembers actions, and it never forgets blood. And maybe that's why, even after everything, I hadn't told her. Not my name, not the truth, not all of it. After Mercy's End let me stay, I took up watch on the south wall. Didn't say much, didn't have to. The others kept their distance. They'd heard the stories, seen the burn marks, smelled the smoke that never quite left my coat. To them, I wasn't a man. I was the warning before the fire, and I let them think that, because fear still works, even when love doesn't. But Della, Vulture, she wasn't afraid of me. Never had been. She walked past me every morning with that same measured gait. No wasted motion, no hesitance, like her footsteps were rationed. Sometimes she'd glance at me, not like a daughter, not like a stranger, like a clockmaker studying a broken timepiece, trying to see if it still ticked. We didn't talk much, not at first, but every night I left something by her door. A rusted bullet casing I'd carried since the maw, an old patch from her mother's coat, the broken copper bracelet I'd worn since the cages. Little things, fragments, proof that I hadn't forgotten. She never took them, but she never threw them away either. It wasn't until the night the scouts came back limping, one eye between the three of them, that we spoke again. "Crow's moving," she said, staring over a map stained with blood and cigarette ash. "Heading east, bringing what's left of the hounds with him." My fists clenched before I knew it. "How many?" "Too many." She didn't ask if I could fight. She already knew the answer. Instead, she asked something else. "Do you remember my mother's voice?" That stopped me cold. I'd heard her scream, laugh, argue, whisper. But a voice? The tone, the shape of it? All I could remember was smoke and silence. I shook my head. Della just nodded. "Didn't think so." She wasn't angry. Worse, she sounded resigned, like she'd buried hope a long time ago and only dug it up because she needed to see the bones. That night, I found her on the roof of the relay tower, watching the moonlight crawl across the wastes like it was afraid to touch anything. I sat beside her, quiet. She didn't tell me to leave, didn't move, didn't speak, until she did. "Why didn't you take me with you?" The question hit harder than any bullet. I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know, but because I did. Because I thought you'd be safer without me. She looked at me then, really looked. "Were you?" There's no armor for that, no fire to hide behind. Only the truth, jagged and bitter. "No," I said. She turned back to the horizon, didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, "Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Paradise Falls, about the hounds, about the red years, about Preacher and the fire and the screaming and the law I built from bone. I told her about her mother, how she never flinched, how she stared down warlords and death like they owed her something. I told her about the day I left, why I walked, how I died, and kept walking anyway, how I hunted, how I burned, how I whispered her name into the wind every day, hoping it'd find her. She didn't cry. Neither did I. The wasteland dries those up early. But when I said her name, her real name, it was like the world paused, just for a second. Della. She didn't correct me, didn't scowl, just let it sit there in the night air like a ghost finally finding its voice. "I never used it," she said. "Felt like a weight." "It was," I said, "but it's yours." The wind shifted, brought the scent of smoke from the south. Crow was coming. He wasn't just hunting a town. He was coming for me. For us. We stood, looked at each other. And I saw it then. Not a child, not a warrior. A reflection. Not perfect, not identical, but shaped by the same fire. She reached into her coat, pulled out something small, tossed it to me. It was a nameplate. Bent. Blood-stained. My old tag. The one I'd worn before the maw. before the hounds, before I was Ash. It read, Jonas Keller, Privat 19th Infantry, Vault 27 Expeditionary. Found it in an old slaver ledger, she said. Didn't think you remembered. I didn't. That's fine, she said. Names are for the dead. We didn't need to say what came next. The fight was coming. And this time, we wouldn't run. She handed me a rifle. Old, modified. A scratched engraving on the side. No kings. I remembered carving that into a wall once. Didn't know someone kept it. Didn't know she'd carried it. We walked down together. No tears, no forgiveness. Just fire. Waiting. They say you can't outrun the past. But that ain't true. You can run. Hell, I ran for years. You just can't outrun what you left behind. Because one day, it walks back into your life with a smile carved into its face and a match in its hand. Crow didn't come quietly. He came with banners stitched from the skin of deserters, with flamers hissing from half-buried APCs, gutted for parts and spite, with war drums built from rib cages and trash can lids, beating out the rhythm of something older than civilization. Violence without purpose. The burned hounds had returned. Not the same ones I'd led. These were worse. You don't build new monsters from scratch. You dig up the old ones, give them teeth again, and point them at something you never had the spine to destroy. From the walls of Mercy's End, we saw them. Like a sickness crawling across the dust. Dozens, maybe more, painted in ash, screaming and static, dragging crucified bodies behind their trucks as a warning to the living. One of them carried a flag made from my old coat. Another wore preacher's skull as a crown. They were telling a story before the first shot was even fired. Ash fell. Crow rose. But stories lie. I stood beside Della on the front line. She didn't shake, didn't blink. Her rifle cradled against her shoulder like it was an extension of her spine. She looked like a war machine, but I saw it. The twitch in her cheek, the way her fingers tapped her belt twice, pause, twice again. A pattern, like breathing. They'll come hard, I said. Good, she said. I'm tired of waiting. The first shot came from the north tower. A single crack, then silence, then all hell. Molotovs arced overhead like dying suns. Gunfire thundered against the walls, the air filled with smoke, screams, and the hum of adrenaline stretching time. And through it all, one sound rose above the rest. Crow's laughter. I saw him, standing on the roof of a captured Brahmin trailer. Same silver hair, though streaked now with soot and pride. Armor made from bones. Human. Raider. Maybe his own. And those eyes. Cold. Dead. Reflecting back the man I used to be. Only worse. "Brother!" he bellowed, voice booming through a scavenged megaphone. "Come out and die like a king!" Della raised her rifle. I put a hand on it. Not yet. The fight dragged on. They breached the east wall. We held the relay tower. They torched the water reserves. We collapsed the fuel lines behind them. Street by street, body by body. A battle with no music. Just the drumbeat of death and the taste of rust in our teeth. At some point, I lost count of the kills. Too much blood in the air. Too many names already buried. I fought beside settlers who didn't know me, who hated what I was, but needed what I'd become. A ghoul-shaped weapon, nothing more, and I gave them what they needed. Della didn't slow. She moved like she'd been carved for this. Like every scar she'd earned was a blueprint, and this town was her cathedral. She was brutal, efficient. And when they shouted her name, "Vulture!" they did it like a curse. Then came the breach. Main gate, blown wide. Crow walked through the smoke like a prophet of rot, surrounded by his war dogs. He didn't run. He sauntered, like he already knew he'd won. "Ash," he called, arms wide. "You made this. Come watch it burn." So I stepped out. Black coat, burned skin, shotgun slung across my back. Every eye turned. Even the gunfire slowed. Crow grinned. "Well, there's the corpse." "Still walking," I said. "Not for long." He drew first. I moved faster. The first shot took his shoulder. The second grazed his jaw. The third, misfire. He laughed. I charged. We hit the dirt like old gods wrestling in the ruin of the world. Fists, teeth, knives. We didn't fight like men. We fought like memories. He stabbed me twice. I bit off part of his ear. We rolled through ash, through blood, through the bones of Mercy's foundation. And just when he had me, just when the knife hovered over my throat, she shot him. One bullet, right through the eye. Crow fell, twitched, stilled. Della stood there, rifle lowered, eyes hard, face unreadable. "He was mine," I said, coughing blood. "He was ours," she corrected. That was the end of it. No speeches, no celebrations, just a pile of corpses cooling in the dust, and a silence that ached. We burned the bodies, even Crow's. Fire still has its place. In the days that followed, Mercy's End buried its dead, rebuilt, quietly. No parades, no songs, just work. And when they looked at me now, it wasn't with fear. It was with something stranger. Like they didn't know if I'd save them, or if I was just the last bullet in a chamber they couldn't afford to fire again. Della and I, we didn't speak for 3 days. Then one night she found me on the wall, watching the stars, or what was left of them. "You're not forgiven," she said. "I know. You're not redeemed. Didn't ask to be." She sat beside me. "But you stayed." "Yeah." Silence again. Then, "So what now?" I asked. She smiled. "Just a little. Now we build. I always thought survival was about fire, about what you could take, what you could burn, what you could make kneel in the dust before your boots. Turns out, I was wrong. Survival isn't fire. It's embers. The things that refuse to die even when the wind howls, when the cold cuts through your ribs, when everything says give up. That's what was left of Mercy's End. And somehow, what was left of me. The town didn't collapse after Crow fell. It didn't celebrate either. It just kept going. Like a limb that learned to walk again after being broken too many times. We patched the walls, buried the dead, boiled clean water until our fingers bled. The kind of work no legend sticks around for. But I did. Della barely spoke to me those first few days. Not out of anger, just exhaustion. We'd burned so hot for so long. Neither of us remembered how to breathe without smoke in our lungs. But little by little, the silence changed. It got softer. One night she left a note by my cot. Not a speech, not an apology. Just 4 words. "Don't run this time." And beneath it a dog tag. Mara's. Still scratched, still stained. I thought it was lost in the maw. She must have carried it for years. After that, we spoke more. Nothing dramatic, just life. What crops might grow in the ash fields. How many rounds were left in the communal ammo stockpile? Which tunnels the mole rats had taken over again? Small things. But for two people made of fire and knives, small things are miracles. They asked me to help train new guards. At first I said no. Didn't trust myself. But Della just handed me a beat-up baton and said, "If you're gonna haunt the walls, at least teach the next ghosts how to swing." So I did. The kids didn't look at me like a hero or a monster. They looked at me like I was something useful. And that was harder to carry than hate. Because hate I understood. But being needed, that was new. One night, a scav named Briggs asked me why I stayed. I didn't answer, just stared at the fire. Then he said, "I figured it out. You're building a grave here for your past." I laughed once, dry, brittle. Maybe, but it ain't mine. Whose then? The world's. See, I used to think I was the last of something. The last warlord, the last fire, the last voice that remembered what the world was before it buried itself. But I was wrong. I'm not the last. I'm just the one who finally stopped running. Mercy's End became more than a name. It became a promise. That even in the bones of the world, something could grow. That ashes could breathe. I started writing again. Not much. Just scraps, notes, maps. A few pages about Della, about the Maw, about Mara. Things I swore I'd never speak aloud. Things the fire couldn't burn away. I don't know who they're for. Maybe the next fool who thinks being feared is the same as being strong. Maybe for her, if she ever wants to know what I couldn't say out loud. Or maybe for me, because some ghosts won't rest unless you put them down in ink. One morning, a girl from the ration hall handed me a drawing. Crayon on scavenged cardboard. It was me, or something shaped like me. Fire for hair, bones for arms. She said, "That's you. You're the wall." I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and kept the drawing. Still have it, folded in my coat. Della's different now, too. She still carries her silence like a weapon, still watches everything. But there's light now, in her eyes, in her voice. She's not waiting for a fight anymore. She's building something, something real. We don't talk about the past often, but when we do, it's quiet, like tending a scar. We speak of Mara sometimes, of what Mercy could have been if she'd lived to see it. I think Della sees her in the quiet moments, in the stubborn kids, in the tough calls, in the walls that somehow still stand. And maybe I see her too. Not long ago, I found Della standing at the old comms relay, staring north. "What is it?" I asked. "A caravan said the Red Riders are moving again. Slavers, north route. You want to chase them?" She didn't answer. Didn't have to. Some things still burn. And that's fine. Because now, we choose what we burn for. She looked at me. "You coming?" And I did something I hadn't done in decades. I smiled. "Yeah, I'm coming. If you've made it this far, you probably think this is where the story ends. Where the ghoul finds peace. Where the daughter forgives the father. Where the fire goes out and the dust finally settles. But the wasteland doesn't work that way. Endings out here aren't clean. They're not neat. They don't care what you wanted. They come like a knife in the dark. Or like a truth you've spent your whole life trying not to say. The tape's almost full. The red light's blinking. Battery's low. My hands are shaking again. So here it is, the last of it. We left Mercy's End at dawn. No speeches, no goodbyes, just dust underfoot and rifles on our backs. Della led the way, as always, silent, focused. Her silhouette against the sun looked like a monument, carved from scar tissue and rage. We headed north, slaver trails, fresh ones. They were calling themselves the Red Riders now. Same tactics, same chains, same filth, different name. They thought they were safe up there, hiding in the ruins of old commuter tunnels, nesting in the bones of forgotten metro stations. They were wrong. We moved like ghosts, through fog, through silence, through the kind of cold that makes your breath feel like it's been stolen from someone else's lungs. We hit them just past Granite Hollow. Didn't ask names, didn't offer mercy, didn't leave survivors. Della cut their leader's throat with the same knife she once used to carve into pit walls. It had her name scratched into the handle. Only this time, she didn't hide it. They had children in cages, dirty, starving, barely more than shadows. One of them asked me, "Are you the burning corpse?" I said no, not anymore. We brought them south, to mercy, to something better. Maybe not safe, but better. And when we got back, no one asked what we'd done. They just opened the gates, like we'd always been part of the story. That night I sat alone in the watchtower. Same place I'd stood when Crow came, only now it was quiet. There was no threat on the horizon, no storm on the wind, just stars. What was left of them anyway. Della found me there, sat beside me. No words. She handed me a can of old whiskey. Didn't say where she found it. Didn't matter. We passed it back and forth. Didn't toast. Didn't smile. Just shared. After a while, I asked her, "Do you hate me?" She didn't answer at first. Then finally, "No." "Do you forgive me?" Another pause. "Not yet." "Fair?" And we just sat there. Two people shaped by fire, finally letting the smoke clear. "You want to know the truth? I am a raider. Still. Not because I kill, not because I burn, not because I take what's not mine, but because I remember what it feels like to be chained, to be broken, to be nothing. And I swore I'd never be nothing again. That's what a raider really is. Not the spikes, not the leather. It's the refusal to be forgotten. I carved my name into the bones of the world not because I wanted to be feared, but because I was afraid no one would remember I ever existed. That all the pain, all the fire, would fade like smoke in the sky. But now I see it. In the kids learning to shoot at Mercy's End. In the way Della teaches them to build just as much as she teaches them to fight. In the garden growing through cracked concrete behind the relay tower. In the laughter I hear some nights when the wind dies down and the fires burn low. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what keeps breathing after you're gone. So yeah, I was a raider. I still am. But I'm something else too. Something I never thought I'd be. Useful. I'm not looking for redemption. Not asking for your forgiveness. But if you're hearing this, if you're some wanderer digging through old tapes in a bunker outside what used to be Baltimore, if you found this recorder half buried in the ash near a town called Mercy's End, then maybe you'll understand this much. The wasteland doesn't hand out second chances. You have to burn for them. And even then, the scars don't fade. But scars mean you survived. That the fire didn't win. That the dust didn't take you. If you see Della, she might go by Vulture still. Tell her she was the best part of me. Tell her I remembered. tell her I stayed. And if you've done worse than me, if you've burned your own path through blood and smoke and silence, don't run. Build something. Even if it's just a wall to stand behind one last time. Even if it's just a garden in the rubble. Even if it's just a memory that someone else can live through. Battery low. Red lights blinking faster now. I don't have many breaths left. But this one's mine. I was a raider. I still am. But for once, that means something good.